Welcome everybody to another Aptora internal training session. Today we're going to talk about item markups. Should be a pretty quick session, but we get a lot of questions on item markups, so I thought I'd cover that here. Let me get some space opened up for us. All right, we'll set that guy aside. Let's go to company menu and talk about the price level list first. Here is where you create your own pricing levels. You give it a name and you pick a predefined pricing method. And there's a lot of pricing methods. I won't cover all of them because there is a good help topic on this, but I'll talk about a couple that might seem strange. We have one called no markup. Well, why would you have a no markup? That's to demonstrate that we meant to not have a markup. So we might pay $10 for the item and we sell it for 10. We would use a no markup method, and that way you know that I didn't forget to pick a markup method. So rather than have no markup method selected, we have one actually called no markup. That confuses a lot of people. We have another one called zero retail price, very handy for many reasons. But this markup method creates a zero retail price. So if you pay $10 for it, the retail price is not $10 as it would be for a no markup. It would actually be zero. And that's really handy for items within a flat rate task, a repair or an install. So you might have a lot of items where you want a zero retail price. This gives you lots of ways to mark up your items, but it also allows you to mark down items from a list price. And you'll see list price on your items right here, list price. So rather than mark up an item to create a retail price, you could mark down from list to create a retail price. And many companies find that very handy. It depends on the industry you're in, but that could be very helpful. You can create as many of these as you like. As you probably know, you can create a default for each customer and change it anytime you want to at the invoice or estimate level. Now, the other way to mark things up is using a markup table. This is a classic way of dealing with retail pricing. It's very effective for the service department, but can be used elsewhere. The idea is to create a tier where you might multiply the cost of the item by 6. So here you have an item up to 49 cents, and you might multiply that by 6. Now you might be thinking, can I use a divisor? No, we use a markup, but ultimately you come out with the same result, whether you use a divisor or a markup. You want to know your gross margin. The idea behind this is that you need to have a high gross profit margin on your little things, because technicians usually forget, or oftentimes they forget to charge for little things. They give them away, and little things tend to get lost. If you go to the hardware store and buy a nut or a bolt, the markup on that item is huge. The profit isn't. So they're not making a lot of money on those things because there's a lot of overhead in keeping all those little nuts and bolts. So the markup has to be very high, but that doesn't mean your net profit is going to be high. It won't be. It's not going to be impressive. So this table can be modified. You have a default. You can load the default table. It will look like this. And you can modify it, and you can have as many tables as you want. And each item can have its own set of markups. Also, you could utilize zone pricing, where each item can have alternative retail prices. These are not markups. These are alternative retail pricing. Don't get hooked on the word zone, because it doesn't necessarily have to be a location or a zone, east, west, north, downtown, uptown. It doesn't have to be a zone. It doesn't have to do with a location necessarily. It could just be a name. But you can have up to 10 alternative retail prices on each of your items as well. So again, price level, markup, you assign it here, the markup method. It suggests a retail price. If you want to use that price, you click this button to populate it. That way you can have any price you want. Ultimately, you can type in any amount you like. If $32.50 or $31.50 is what you want to charge, fine. That way you can round up to an even dollar if you care to. As I mentioned, the customer can have a default markup. That way, when you go to create an invoice, it uses their markup. If they don't have a markup, then it will use the items markup. So let's put that refrigerant on here. It will use the markup that we have set for that customer. And that's how it arrived at the price. And again, you can change that if you care to. If you go into one of these forms and you see in what we call the header area a markup method, you can change it here, and it will offer to change all of the items that are already on the grid, and you can say yes or no to that. You have some options, but it'll also use that markup for every item you add after that. And you will see that not only on invoices, but you will see it on bills, for example, and other areas. I shouldn't say bills. I meant to say on estimates. You'll see that in other areas of the program. All right, so now that you have your retail pricing set, remember, as you use the accounting software, as you enter POs, you receive items, you enter bills, the software is constantly updating the price of items. If you use our software for flat rate pricing, cookbook pricing, installation pricing, it's always updating itself. Every time you order something, the price gets updated, so you always have the current price. People often ask us if we update the flat rate pricing system. We don't need to, because as you use the software, this is full-blown enterprise level accounting, of course, as you use the software, the pricing is updated automatically. No company's ever going to get your price on these things correct, no matter what they tell you. No way. And what about preseason or special offers, special negotiated pricing, things like that? They'll never get it right. But our software gets it right if you use it. And of course you should. You should be using it to buy things. Well, the pricing gets updated. Now, if you have never bought the item, then you would import the latest pricing from your vendor. You would say to your favorite supplier, I would like you to create a spreadsheet with all my current pricing should I buy these things. And then you would import that to update your pricing. As the direct cost or your average cost changes, the retail price does not change automatically. The reason why is we don't want to change the retail price automatically because that could affect people in the field or salespeople creating estimates. It could affect somebody in another room who's about to hit the save button on an estimate. If you change the retail price, their estimate could possibly change the moment they click save, and they weren't expecting that. So we have a mechanism that updates the retail price. Under company, it's called update retail price. Not a very creative name, right? But that's what it does. So let's click that and have a look. The first thing that you want to do is say to this utility, if there is no markup, I want you to use the following markup. So that way, if you update your retail pricing, it's possible that there's no markup method. And you can say to the software, use this markup method in case it doesn't exist. And then you have some options that are probably fairly obvious. You can multiply the direct cost by the markup method. Or you could multiply the average cost by the markup method. So it could be the cost that you pay for it, or it could be the average cost that you pay for the item. You could also multiply using the estimated cost when the average cost is empty, blank, null. And we usually recommend that. Now, the average cost could be blank, null, zero, when you don't have any in stock. If you don't have any in stock, there is no average price. There's no average unit cost. And that, of course, is by design. That's how accounting works. Multiply using the estimated cost. Use average cost if it is blank. And so that would use the estimated cost here, and it would use the average cost if the estimated cost is blank. So those two sound alike, but they're different because this is using estimated, but if it's blank, use average. This uses estimated when average is blank. So typically we recommend this, but you can do whatever you like. And then ignore the retail price field if it's populated. So if it already has a price, one option is to say, hey, don't change the retail price. I don't want to change it. Click OK to update when you're ready and hit the update button. And within just seconds, it will update all of your items. Even if you have thousands of items, it'll be very quick. And keep in mind that change is instantaneous. If somebody in the field hasn't created an invoice yet, it could potentially change the price of that invoice. That's true with estimates and everything else. The flat rate book would update. However, existing records won't change. So if you have an invoice, an estimate, a work order, those won't change. It just changes the item. And if you use the item, of course, that'll have an effect on that form. So that is it. That's the explanation of markups. There's quite a bit more I could say, as always. There's a lot more that we could do with it, but that pretty well explains the feature. And don't forget about the zone pricing option as well. That's set up on each item. All right, well, that does it for item markup. I hope that was helpful. Thank you, everybody.